I run a small electronics repair shop in Munich's Schwabing district. Last Tuesday, this American woman walked in holding her phone like it was evidence in a murder trial. She placed it on my counter and announced she needed it fixed the American way, which apparently meant immediate service with complimentary apologies. I told her I'd have it ready Thursday. She stared at me like I'd suggested human sacrifice, then explained very slowly, as if I were the one struggling with language, that in civilized countries, customer service meant same-day repairs. In the States, they'd have this done in an hour, she said. I nodded and repeated Thursday. She asked to speak to my manager. I told her I was the manager. She left the phone and walked out, muttering about German efficiency being false advertising. My cousin manages a bakery in Freiburg. An American tourist came in at 7:45 a.m. and requested a custom birthday cake for pickup that afternoon. When my cousin explained they needed 3 days' notice, the guy laughed and said American bakeries could whip up wedding cakes with 2 hours warning because we value hustle. He seemed genuinely shocked when my cousin said no. My neighbor works at a Stuttgart gym. An American member complained that the front desk staff never greeted him with enthusiastic smiles. He filed an actual complaint stating that German customer service violated his right to feel welcomed. Management responded by pointing to the contract he'd signed, which mentioned nothing about mandatory cheerfulness. The Thursday repair appointment lady. She came back and asked why I hadn't called with updates. I told her the phone wasn't ready yet. She said American repair shops send hourly text updates with technician photos for transparency and trust building. I told her we don't do that here. She said that explained why Germany was still developing its service sector. I handed her the fixed phone. She didn't say thank you. I'm a parking enforcement officer in Hamburg's Altona district. And last month I watched an American couple park their rental car directly in front of a clearly marked no parking zone outside the Rathaus. The signs were in 3 languages, including English, with diagrams showing a car with a red X through it. I approached to issue the ticket, and the husband immediately launched into an explanation about how they were just running in for 5 minutes and how American cops use discretion for honest mistakes. I told him discretion doesn't override posted regulations. He responded that back home officers appreciate when people are upfront and friendly about minor violations, then pivoted to asking about my day and complimenting Hamburg's architecture. His wife chimed in that American police value community relationships over technicalities. I completed the ticket and handed it over. He read the fine amount, went silent for 3 seconds, then asked if I accepted Venmo, because that's how we handle these small things in civilized places. I pointed to the payment website on the ticket. They drove off. I watched them park illegally again 2 blocks down. My brother works in civil registration at the Cologne city office. An American woman came in to register her new address. She'd brought the wrong form version 1 from 2019, instead of the current 2024 edition. He explained she needed the updated form available on the website or from the ground floor information desk. She said American bureaucrats make exceptions for good faith efforts, and that she'd spent 20 minutes filling out this version so it should count. My brother repeated that he couldn't process outdated forms due to database compatibility. She countered that flexibility is what separates first world services from Soviet era rigidity, and suggested Germany modernize its approach to paperwork. He directed her downstairs to get the correct form. She returned 40 minutes later with the right version, but announced she was filing a complaint about inefficient systems that punish prepared citizens. Complaint went nowhere. I worked the information desk at Berlin's Bürgeramt in MIT. An American man approached, asking how to expedite his residence permit application because he had connections back home. Who could make calls? I explained that processing times are fixed, regardless of personal networks. He insisted that, in America, knowing the right people opens doors, and suggested I check if my supervisor had flexibility for special cases. I told him everyone follows the same timeline. He then asked if a cash tip might help move things along, lowering his voice like we were negotiating a drug deal. I explained that offering money to public officials was illegal. He laughed nervously and said he meant it as appreciation for good service, like Americans do with valets and maitre d's. I repeated that it was illegal. He left confused, returned the next day, and asked a different colleague the same question. Word got around my sister handles noise complaints for a housing cooperative in Frankfurt. An American tenant called to report that his upstairs neighbor was vacuuming at 9:15 p.m. on a Wednesday, violating quiet hours that start at 10 p.m. When my sister explained he'd misread the building rules, he insisted that common courtesy meant no loud activities after 8 p.m. anywhere in the developed world. He cited his apartment building in Denver, where management enforced respect-based quiet time starting at sundown. My sister read him the exact regulation from the lease agreement. He argued that German laws were technically correct, but socially outdated, and that evolved societies regulate based on empathy, not arbitrary timestamps. She told him to file a formal complaint if he wished, knowing it would be dismissed. He filed it. It was dismissed. He called back asking why, and my sister had to explain the rules a second time. I'm the head server at a traditional Bavarian restaurant in Nuremberg's Altstadt. Last Saturday evening, an American family of 4 walked in at 8:35 p.m. without a reservation and asked for a table by the window. I told them we were fully booked and suggested they tried the Gasthaus 2 streets over. The father responded that American restaurants always find a way to accommodate and offered to wait at the bar until something opened up. I explained we don't operate that way and that our reservations run until closing. He said that back in Phoenix, hosts appreciate persistence and will squeeze people in if they're polite about it. His wife added that their kids were hungry and that family-friendly countries prioritize children's needs, repeated my suggestion. About the other restaurant, the father asked to speak with the owner, seemingly unaware he was looking at him. I clarified my position. He stared, then asked how German restaurants stayed in business with such rigid policies. They left, and I watched through the window as they stood outside for 5 minutes, apparently hoping I'd change my mind. I didn't. My best friend bartends at a cocktail lounge in Leipzig. An American guy ordered a mojito and then hovered at the bar watching every step of the preparation, offering tips like muddling the mint longer and adding a splash more rum for authenticity. When my friend served the drink, the guy took 1 sip and said it was good but not great because American bartenders really understand balance. He asked if my friend had ever worked in the States or taken mixology courses, implying German bartenders lacked proper training. My friend, who'd worked in London and Barcelona before Leipzig, just nodded. The American then requested the mojito be remade with more passion, explaining that craft cocktails require a connection between the bartender and the drink. My friend refused. The guy left a €3 tip on a €15 cocktail and told the table next to him that European service lacks the personal touch. That table was full of locals who'd watched the entire interaction. They left my friend a €20 tip out of solidarity. I manage a butcher shop in Bremen's Old Market Square. An American woman came in asking for a pound of your best ground beef, which we don't pre-grind for food safety reasons. I offered to grind fresh chuck or sirloin to her specifications. She said American butchers keep ground beef ready because efficiency matters in retail, and she didn't have time to wait. I told her it would take 3 minutes. She sighed dramatically and agreed. Then spent those 3 minutes explaining that pre-ground meat was standard in customer-focused markets and that Germans were behind the curve on convenience culture. When I handed her the package, she waited on her phone with some app and announced it was 40 grams over a pound. She wanted a refund for the overage. I explained we sell by weighting grams and that she'd gotten exactly what she ordered by metric conversion. She called this deceptive business practices and said American shops honor the customer's measurement preference. I offered to remove 40 grams. She declined and paid, muttering about exchange rates and cultural barriers. My uncle owns a cafe in Heidelberg near the castle. An American couple ordered 2 cappuccinos and sat at a prime outdoor table for 3 hours, working on laptops with documents spread everywhere. When my uncle politely suggested they might be more comfortable at a co-working space, given the lunch rush forming outside, the man said American cafes encourage lingering because it builds atmosphere and community. He gestured at his empty cup as if it entitled him to territorial rights. My uncle explained that table turnover was necessary during peak hours. The woman responded that they'd spent €8 total, and that paying customers deserve respect. It's not eviction. Then cited some article about European cafe culture being about slow living and intellectual discourse. My uncle pointed out that slow living doesn't mean monopolizing tables during rushes. They finally left after another 20 minutes, leaving a €1 tip and a Yelp review complaining about hostile service that contradicts Germany's cafe reputation. I worked the ticket counter at Hanover's main train station. An American man approached yesterday asking why his rail pass didn't include a reserved seat on the ice to Munich. I explained that reservations are separate from passes and cost extra. He laughed and said American train systems bundle everything because nickel-and-diming customers is bad business. I clarified that Deutsche Bahn and Amtrak have different pricing models. He insisted this was a scam designed to confuse tourists, and that back-home transparency laws would shut this down. I showed him the clear pricing breakdown on the website. In English, explaining the optional reservation system, he called it deliberately complicated and said American. Companies value simplicity because we respect people's time and intelligence. He bought the reservation while muttering about European travel being stuck in the past. 2 hours later, his wife called the counter asking why they couldn't sit in their reserved seats, which were in a different car than where they'd randomly sat down. My colleague had to explain how reservations work. Again, my girlfriend does. Customer support for a car rental agency at Frankfurt Airport. An American customer called, furious that he'd received a speeding ticket from a camera on the Autobahn. He demanded the company contest it because the GPS showed 140 kilometers per hour, which is like 85 miles per hour. And that's normal highway speed in Texas. She explained that even on unrestricted sections, temporary limits apply in construction zones, which is where he'd been caught doing 142 in an 80 zone. He argued that American highways post visible warnings well in advance, and that he'd seen no signs, which meant the ticket was entrapment. She told him the signs were standard yellow construction markers every 500 meters. He said those could mean anything, and that Germany should adopt international signage standards like America uses. She explained Germany helped create those international standards. He demanded to know why the rental car didn't have a speed governor to prevent violations, calling it negligent to give tourist cars capable of illegal speeds. She suggested he pay the fine. He said he'd dispute it with his credit card company for unauthorized charges. He lost that dispute. I'm a tour guide in Rothenburg, Obertober. During a walking tour last week, an American woman kept interrupting to ask why we didn't have public restrooms on every corner like civilized cities. I explained that restrooms are available in restaurants, cafes, and marked public facilities. She said American cities provide free facilities every 2 blocks because bodily functions are a human right. It's not a transaction. I pointed out the nearest cafe with a restroom. She refused to buy anything and called it extortion to charge people for basic dignity. Another American in the group chimed in that European cities nickel and dime everything Americans provide freely, listing water refills and bathroom access as examples. I mentioned that many American restaurants also restrict restrooms to customers. He said that's different because American businesses communicate expectations clearly, whereas Europe has hidden rules designed to catch tourists off guard. The restroom woman eventually used a cafe facility and left without purchasing anything. The owner chased her down the street. She told him American establishments trust their customers and don't harass people over bathroom access. He banned her from returning. I teach intermediate German at a language school in Dresden. An American student consistently refused to use formal Sie with me, insisting that du was more authentic because Americans value equality over outdated hierarchies. I explained that formal address shows respect in professional contexts, not inequality. He said his previous teacher in California told him Germans were moving away from Sie and that young people preferred informal speech. I'm 28. I told him to use Sie. He argued that language evolves through use and that forcing archaic formality prevents natural linguistic development. He cited some blog posts about German youth culture rejecting traditional grammar. I told him that blog was wrong and that he'd offend people in professional settings. He said Americans adapt through immersion. not rules, and kept using do. After 3 weeks, he complained that Germans he met outside class seemed cold and distant. I suggested his pronoun usage might be the issue. He disagreed, saying his authentic approach should be appreciated. By forward-thinking Europeans, he left a negative review, saying I was stuck in textbook teaching instead of real-world German. Failed the B2 exam twice, my roommate. Works at an international law firm in Dusseldorf. An American associate transferred from the New York office and spent his first week trying to implement collaborative feedback sessions where colleagues would publicly share growth opportunities for each other. He sent a firm-wide email proposing this, explaining that American workplaces thrive on transparent communication and mutual accountability. His managing partner responded with a single sentence, "We have annual reviews." The associate replied, all suggesting that annual reviews were insufficient for agile professional development and that German corporate culture would benefit from American innovation and team dynamics. Nobody responded. He stopped sending those emails after a month, but he still occasionally mentions that German colleagues are less engaged with continuous improvement frameworks. Last week, he told my roommate that he finally understood German efficiency. You people just don't waste time on stuff that doesn't matter.
Oh, my roommate said nothing.
Which the associate somehow interpreted as agreement. That's the thing about directness. You can deliver it perfectly. And some people will still find a way to miss the point entirely, while congratulating themselves on finally getting it.